terror on American soil. CIA operative suspected of killing European agent. Hero cop fighting for freedom. They may sound like headlines that have been plucked from today's newspaper, but when you add in pulse-pounding drama, when you add in a wisecracking wit, when you add in a sexy, smart love interest, then you can gently transition from the hard news to the hard cover. I'm Michael Smerconish. Welcome to Book Club. Question: do we need a nuclear deterrent to terrorism? Nelson DeMille makes the suggestion in his new book, Wildfire, whose sales are spreading like, well, wildfire. It debuted at number 2 on the New York Times bestsellers list, number 1 at the Wall Street Journal, number 1 at Publishers Weekly. It's another work of fiction by the man who already has more than 1 million books in print, but this one has people talking about a very real subject: how to stop Islamic extremists from attacking American cities. Nelson DeMille, welcome to Book Club.
Thank you, Michael.
Mutually assured destruction, MAD. In the Cold War, this idea that if the Soviets nuke us, we're going to nuke them and vice versa. Consequently, nobody nuked anybody. Are you saying there's something similar that exists to combat radical Islam?
Well, in the book I'm saying this, and I think if we don't have this program, as I say in my preface to the book, we ought to. I mean, the only time we talk about the nuclear possibilities in terms of terrorism is when we talk about them planting a bomb in an American city. But we never talk about what we would do in return, and I think this is the missing part of the equation.
Well, how would it work? You tell me, how would Wildfire, in Nelson DeMille's view of the world, be carried out?
Well, with the Russians, we knew where the missiles were coming from. We see them on the... Here, these would be, obviously, bombs planted in American cities. But I think the presumption of guilt would be so strong against Islam that we would just have to assume this is where it came from. We would announce to the world that if an American city was hit with a nuclear bomb, we would presume it's from the world of Islam, and we would retaliate against the world of Islam. And I think that would kind of foreclose that possibility. This is what I think.
You maintain in the book that there were 70 or so nuclear suitcases that the Soviets lost track of. Fact or fiction?
That's fact. That's fact. The Soviets were great at miniaturizing nuclear weapons. They had these, what they used to call suitcase nukes. But 76 of them actually, depending on who's counting, are missing from the Soviet arsenal. And, I postulate in the book, obviously, that 2 of them got in the wrong hands.
John Corey is a hard-charging guy, likes his drink, likes his female companionship, very street smart. Some would say there's a lot of DeMille in John Corey.
Well, that may have been years ago.
Before the new baby.
Right, before the new baby.
DeMille fans, you can have an argument break out among DeMille fans as to which was the best, which is their favorite among all of your books. What's Nelson DeMille's favorite of his books?
My favorite is The Gold Coast. It's the book that's not the thriller. It's the more serious novel. It's a novel that the New York Times, for whatever that's worth, compared to Edith Wharton, and I think Time Magazine compared it to F. Scott Fitzgerald. It was a very, very, I say serious book, but serious and still funny at the same time. And what I'm doing now is a sequel, 12 years later, to The Gold Coast, because I really want a good review in the New York Times.
So that's what's next for Nelson DeMille?
Yes. Gold Coast 2. We don't have a name for it yet.
Oh, it's great to have Nelson DeMille in Book Club. I'm so glad you're here. Coming up more with author Nelson DeMille, including your questions. The email address is bookclub@cnn.com, or text us at CNN TV, keyword Book Club. We tried Smerconish, but I can't type it in there myself sometimes. Hey, welcome back to Book Club. We've got Nelson DeMille, and we've got your questions. First up, Nelson, is Gail in Barrington, Rhode Island, who is interested in knowing any more DeMille movies destined for the big screen, and she's particularly interested in Lion's Game.
Well, the only feature film I had made was The General's Daughter with Travolta back in
great movie, by the way.
Great movie, and Paramount did well with it. And the one that's closest to being made now is probably The Charm School. But as far as The Lion's Game, this character of John Corey is owned by Columbia Motion Pictures. They've got all the Corey books, including Plum Lion's Game, I think Nightfall, and my new one, Wildfire.
So they're all optioned?
They're all optioned, you know. Yeah, they're all optioned. All of my books are optioned.
So do they, I mean, you know, not to be crass, but do they pay you rent? I mean, how does that work?
You can retire on the options if you lived in Mexico, probably. You know. No, I mean,
Not on Long Island.
And a lot of writers say that. I mean, not on Long Island, but you know, the option money is good. But you know, sometimes they sell it outright too. But the point is, you want to see the movie made. I mean, they're kind of renting it, and they rent it for years, and they can't get anything done with it, and go on to somebody else.
I hope it happens. All right, text message from Mark Z. Great question. Wants to know, you ever get writer's block?
Oh, you know, I'm asked that question a lot. I don't even know what writer's block is. I'm ready to sit down one day and get writer's block, so I know what writer's block is. I'm sure it exists, and
But you don't get it.
I don't get it. You sit there, and this is what you're there for, you know. And you can get writer's block for 5 minutes, maybe. But if you sit there long enough, and it might take 15 minutes, it'll start to come. That's what you do for a living.
Hey, now, great email from Janice in Jersey, who wants to know how and where does Nelson DeMille work? It's perfect because it leads us neatly into this. Everybody, take a look.
He used to have a sign out that said on the door, it said Area 51. No knocking, no noise, you know, that type of thing. And I think that worked for the outside world too. But nobody actually knows where that office is. That's the other thing. It's a secret. I write longhand because that's the way I learned how to write in the third grade, I guess. And I think it's just a better process. It's, you know, from the brain to the hand to the paper. I use yellow pads, but sometimes I switch the color of the pads. I get bored with the yellow, and sometimes I go to gray or green, a tinted green. The legal pads, and I use a #1 pencil. #1 is soft, and if you're really writing thousands of words a day, and you got a #2 and #3, I mean, this sounds silly, but your hand starts to drag, and at the end of the day, you really are getting cramped up. The chair almost doesn't matter. I think if you sit in it long enough, it will be comfortable. After 7 hours, it's either going to be, or it's going to be uncomfortable. Doesn't really matter. But having said that, it's the height of the desk sometimes that the chair has got to be, if nothing else, adjustable. It can't be affixed. It's got to be adjustable. When I'm too low, I notice that this bothers me. And if I'm too high, it bothers me. There is some height there, and I don't know what that height is. I wish I should probably measure it. Depending on the chair, now I feel comfortable. I feel like, you know, my world is in front of me, and my coffee is within easy reach. This ashtray is over here. The yellow pad is over there.
You're giving a whole new meaning to Area 51. I'm loving it. Nelson DeMille, thank you. Check out our video podcast to see more of Nelson DeMille's interview, as well as this week's Amazon.com book club specials. Just go to iTunes or CNN.com/podcast and click on my head. I'm going to sound like a geek when I say this, but there is nothing like the feeling of having a good book and wanting to return to it night after night. Chuck, to me.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I had to sit and read it through in 2 days.
Leslie, what's really on the nightstand?
Just finished Marley and Me.
And very, very tough to get through the end, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You're a dog person?
Yes.
Stephen King. I have Cell and Lycee Stalk.
I have never been a Stephen King guy.
I've got Flags of Our Father as my #1 read right now.
By the way, an awfully well-read audience. Welcome back to Book Club. I'm Michael Smerconish. So, you heard me ask of my radio audience, what's on your nightstand? And now I've got two well-read individuals in front of me, and I want to ask them the same question. Lola Olganaki is a New York Times culture reporter, and BlackPlanet.com co-founder Omar Wasso. Both join us. Welcome to Book Club.
Thank you.
I will go first. I am a huge Seinfeld fan, and I think this goes in the category of, coffee table book, but Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, laugh your fanny off kind of stuff. This book contains all of the scripts, and I go through them and I read them and I laugh out loud just like I do when a TV show is on. So big thumbs up for the Curb Your Enthusiasm book. And by the way, note that resemblance. You see the two of us right there?
Separated at birth.
Which is why I'm perhaps partial to that. Everybody wants in on the debate about what to do in Iraq, but I think that very few have taken the time to read the Iraq Study Commission report. Much like the 9/11 Commission report, I figure you got to do it. I paid $10.95 at Borders. You can download it and print it for free.
Yeah, there's this thing called the internet you might look into.
I feel like people have debate overload, though. People just want some sort of escapism.
All right, well, then I want one person to read it. I want the president to read it. If I can get the president to read it, because he totally hosed it without reading the thing.
So hold your breath on that one.
Then I would be a happy guy.
I think he's hooked on phonics, actually.
Oh.
Sorry.
All right, as long as we're trashing presidents. Palestine,
Not Jimmy Carter.
Peace, not apartheid. Jimmy Carter, he is getting hammered for this, and I think he deserves it. Defended himself, by the way, in the Washington Post in an op-ed. And basically says that, the suicide bombings ought to stop when the Arabs get from the Israelis what they're looking for, which is just ludicrous. So there you go. Lola, what do you got?
I've got They Call Me Naughty Lola, actually.
Well,
and
they
it's
do
not what
indeed.
you think. It's not what you think. No dominatrix in this. It's actually a group of personal ads culled from the London Review of Books. And when you think personal ads, you think sort of, long walks on the beach, fireside chats, things that really play up your attributes. Not in this book. Instead,
Can I just say, if it says bald talk show host from Philly, it's not me. It is not me, I swear.
it actually says hot talk show host from Philly, looking for a good time. No. One of the passages in here I just think is just downright hysterical. Fat and ugly male, 53, seeks short-sighted woman with tremendous sexual appetite.
Yeah, baby.
Truth in advertising.
Exactly.
Aren't we all?
He is not pulling the wool over your eyes here. So, and then next, something a little more highbrow, The Namesake by Humpa Lahiri. A family in Calcutta moves to the U.S. and sort of how they assimilate to the U.S. and how they try to hold on to their roots but also try to acclimate themselves to Western culture. And it's largely about the struggles of their children, these first-generation Americans. And I could really relate to it on a deeper level because my parents are from Nigeria. I'm a first-generation American. And I've seen how we had to struggle with just, this things like people not understanding how to pronounce your last name and the terror that goes into that when the
know that
substitute
feeling.
teacher shows up. You do.
Omar.
Now,
You got one more?
No, I don't. Go right ahead, Omar.
Well, I've got a
shoes
book,
to fill.
I've got Smoke and Mirrors, which is a history of the war on drugs, and it is very meticulously documented, but reads like a novel and gives you this quick introduction to how we went from a sort of set of small policies to something where now we've got millions of people who are incarcerated in the criminal justice system. So that's both highly readable
Omar, let me
and
see
really
this, man.
important history.
I'm not saying you, but it looks like somebody did a couple of lines right off the cover. I mean, where has been? Look at this.
Yeah. It's I enjoyed this book so much that even after it got flooded in my parents' basement, I threw away most of the other books and kept that one. So
Sure, flooded.
it's,
by your bong.
Well, I never heard of Easy Wider Publications before, but there you go.
And my second book is Symptomatic by Danzy Senna. It's a novel, a quick read, but really engaging, sort of a dark noir meets sort of identity crisis.
Man, that sounds like no disrespect, but a Harvard guy would love reading something like that.
It reads a bit like an airport novel in that it's very fast-paced and it has this kind of murder mystery quality to it.
Nobody's getting laid in that book either, right?
There's a
If
running
this is-
theme here,
Yeah,
right?
if this is the threshold, how many of your books did people get laid in? Let's
Not in this one. No one got laid in that book, and no one certainly got laid after reading this book.
Certainly not Jimmy Carter. That's going to do it for us today. My thanks to Lola Okanaki and Wasso, and of course Nelson DeMille. Hey, your assignment for next week, The God Delusion. Controversial author and scientist Richard Dawkins joins us for book club. It's going to be terrific. Thank you for attending this week's book club meeting. The meeting's adjourned.